We have an amazing. Hello, I'm Dr. Cheryl, and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl. The theme of our show is raising the awareness and consciousness in the relationship with wealth and applying unconditional love. Always remember that your present situation is not your final destination. The best is yet to come, by Zig Ziglar. I'd like to start with a little joke. Sitting by the window of her convent, Sister Mary opened a letter from home one evening. Inside the letter was a $100 bill from her parents. Sister Mary smiled at the gesture. As she read the letter by the window, she noticed a shabbily dressed stranger leaning against the lamppost below. Quickly, she wrote, "Don't despair." Sister Mary, on a piece of paper, wrapped the $100 bill in it, got the man's attention, and tossed it out the window to him. The stranger picked it up, and with a puzzled expression and a tip of his hat, went off down the street. The next day, Sister Mary was told that the man was at the door, insisting on seeing her. She went down and found the stranger waiting. Without a word, he handed her a huge wad of $100 bills. "What's this?" she asked. "That's the $8,000 you have coming to you, sister," he replied. "Don't despair. Paid 80 to 1. Ooh, goodness. We have an amazing guest this evening. Julie Motz is an internationally known healer and author. In 1994, working in surgery with Dr. Mehmet Oz, she pioneered the practice of doing energy healing in the operating room with patients during their operations. She has developed many innovative techniques for reprogramming the body and the mind, and helped hundreds of people heal faster and recover from conditions from which they thought they would be suffering for their entire lives. She was featured in the New York Times Magazine, Psychology Today, Prevention, and the Ladies' Home Journal, on Dateline, CNN, and ABC Nightly. The Etny Reader named her as one of the people who will change the world in the 21st century. Her book, Hands on Life, has been published in 5 languages. This is the first segment of a 2-part discussion with Julie. All right. Welcome, Julie. It's an honor and a joy to have you on our show. You have a wonderful repertoire of wonderful, between your book and your reputation and your workshops. Anyway, it's just a joy to have you on here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I would like you to start telling us about where you grew up and how you kind of got to where you are.
Well, I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan, in a very competitive intellectual household. My father was a scientist, a theoretical physicist. My mother was an English teacher and then a library administrator. And the world that I've fallen into, the world of healing, is the last thing anyone would expect me to be inhabiting. My first profession was as a documentary filmmaker. I made documentary films for public television for 23 years in New York.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, and then a fall in acrobatics class led me to seek healing.
Oh.
My brother, who had become a doctor by then, told me that Western medicine could do nothing for my back.
Oh, interesting.
And,
so you went to your brother?
I just, because everything had always worked perfectly up till then.
Yeah.
And he said, don't even bother to see a doctor.
Yeah.
And I tried acupuncture, which made things worse. This is the early 1980s. There was very little really happening in the United States. I tried chiropractic, and the person did kind of mesmeric electromagnetic passes, which made me feel better for 24 hours at a time.
Yes.
And I was at a dinner party in Washington, D.C., when the hostess decided that she would practice Reiki on me.
Oh, okay.
I had never heard about this before.
Right.
And if it weren't in the home of a very wealthy supporter of the Democratic Party, whom I was hoping would help me get money for my films, I probably would never have followed her back to the living room and stretched myself out on the carpet and let her lean over me. but
Yeah.
she did.
Yeah.
And she said, Reiki for people is a form of energy healing,
Right,
of working
right.
with the body's energy. She said,
Absolutely.
I'm going to put my hands on various places in your body, and where I feel a cold spot, I'm going to ask you to bring your awareness there and free associate. So the first place she put her hands were on my shoulders, and she said, there's a cold spot on your left shoulder, Julie. I want you to bring your awareness there and free associate. Well, I didn't know what bring your awareness to your shoulder was, and this was Greek to me. So I just said to myself, become your shoulder, Julie. And the next thing I knew, I saw my mother with her hand raised to smack me across the face when I was 3 years old. And I had always known that my mother used to hit me, but I knew it like something you would read in a history book. I didn't know how I knew it. I had no visceral memories, no visual memories. And all of a sudden there it was. And she said, I'm going to pull the pain out of your body. And as she pulled her hand up, the pain vanished and the image faded. Of course, I realized my mother was right-handed, so when she would come to hit me, I would go like that.
Yeah, right.
And my
To
left
protect
shoulder
her.
was still holding the memory of that.
Oh, sure.
So I went back to New York, and I found myself a Reiki practitioner, and in 6 months, all my back pain was gone, and all kinds of horrible memories from my childhood had come up. And that was how I started. I was still a documentary filmmaker, but I had a friend who was studying, she was the only Westerner studying Chinese medicine, the only woman studying Chinese medicine at the Chinese medical school in Rome. So she and I started corresponding. I got interested in Chinese medicine. I studied the acupuncture meridians. This was the early 80s. There was really relatively little happening.
Just brand new in our
So
country.
I did go for a level 1 Reiki training, which I now think was totally unnecessary, but at the time it made me feel that I had magical powers. I think we all have those powers, but Reiki really makes you focus on, bringing them to the surface. And I would just study it a little bit here and a little bit there, and gradually I became more and more intrigued with the healing and less interested in making documentary films. And I just...
What kind of documentary films did you do?
They were films about American history and American culture, all for public television.
Okay.
And so I kind of, as opposed to filmmaking, which I pursued vigorously, healing was something I just kind of fell into.
Sure. Well,
and
literally.
yeah, and just I kept getting more and more interested in doing more and more until it just became plain that that was more interesting to me than the filmmaking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, so then in the 80s, you became a Reiki.
I studied Reiki, but I only did it on friends, and on myself.
Okay.
And then, and I studied, as I said, other things. I studied, I spent 1 weekend studying with Barbara Brennan, and that was enough. It sort of freaked me out. Because I was thinking of doing the 4-year training. But I began to contextualize things. I began to take what I was learning about energy and put it together with what I knew about emotions. And I eventually involved a whole scheme for the emotional / energetic life of the body. And then I decided to go to graduate school in public health, because I didn't exactly know what to do with myself at that point, but I thought I would get into healthcare administration and I would change things from the inside out.
Yes.
So I went to School of Public Health at Columbia, but after 2 weeks I realized that
It was going to be too difficult to change?
No, it was too boring.
Oh.
That I didn't belong in public health school.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, Columbia had gotten a grant to open up a center for alternative medicine.
Oh.
But they were terrified of spending the money because it was so out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's sort of a long story, but I was working as a volunteer at the center. There was just one woman running it. And she said, we got a phone call, cardiothoracic surgeries interested in alternative medicine.
Oh, nice.
I said, God, they're a major profit center for the hospital. They make more money than God, We'll get them, they'll give us a planning grant. We'll travel all over the world. We'll put Dean Winners to shame. I was all ready to go. So I said, who's the contact person? Who's the contact person? She said, it's this guy, Mehmet Oz.
Okay. Yes.
So I called, and I got Mehmet on the phone, and it turned out they weren't going to give us any money. They were hoping that if they added alternative medicine, they could make even more money for the cardiothoracic surgery department. So as I was trying to sort of get off the phone and not show my disappointment, he said, well, and what do you do? I said, well, I'm an energy healer, and I thought that would end the discussion. And I've studied, all kinds of, alternative medicine modalities. He said, well, would you come in for a consultation to consult with us? So I thought, well, my center is run by a woman and a PhD. He's a man and an MD. He has much more clout around the medical center than we do. Maybe their interest would, spark some interest in the rest of the hospital, and we could get something going, even if they're not going to put out any money.
Right.
So I went to meet, I went to that, first of all, you get off the 6th floor, you sink into the plush carpet almost up to your knees. There's polished mahogany furniture, indirect lighting, copies of the New Yorker to read. It's not like the rest of the hospital.
Yeah.
So I'm shown back to a conference room, and in comes Mehmet, who in those days looked like a cross between Omar Sharif and Clark Gable, this tall, good-looking guy. And there was someone who used to run the heart-lung machine, a patient advocate person, and the sort of central casting dietitian, overweight and with a bad complexion. And this was the crew that we were going to talk about alternative medicine with. And Mehmet asked me to come back with a list of everything in alternative medicine that could be useful for cardiothoracic surgery patients. So I came back with this long list and included, serve them only organic food.
Yes.
At which point the dietitian spoke up and said, I believe in democracy. I think people should be given a choice in their hospital menus.
Oh boy.
As if people ever even get what they actually choose on the limited hospital menu. And then I said, clean the room with only organic cleansers. And the patient advocate said, Julie, if we can get the people to clean the room, we'll be ahead of the game.
Oh my goodness.
And anyway, on and on and on. But one of my recommendations was hypnosis, because I had written an article about hypnosis for surgery. And it had been so successful at a hospital across town that they'd actually broken the blind and started doing it with everybody. So I proposed this. I said, look, it's gotten through the institutional review board of one hospital. We can probably get it through at Columbia. It's an easy shot. Why don't you go for that? So he just decided to do that. With I think it was first-time coronary bypass patients with no complications. So I thought, fine, And I was walking out there. He said, "What are you going to do?" I thought, "What am I going to do? I'm just giving you my advice." He said, so obviously he expected me to hang around and do something.
Yeah, okay.
And so I said, well,
He wanted to see you in action.
Whatever. I said, I'll work with the other cases. What have you got? He said, well, we have heart transplants, mechanical heart implants, valve replacements. I said, great, I'll do energy healing with them. He said, no, you can't say you're doing energy healing.
This is Mehmet.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But this was like 1994.
Yeah, okay.
So I said, okay, I'll say I'm doing energy evaluations of the patients. He said, okay, that sounds okay. Yeah. So we developed this routine. I write about it in my book, I called 2 friends of mine who were also healers because I didn't want to be in the hospital alone.
Sure.
And Mehmet would go into the room, and we would sort of be behind him, and he would say, this is my colleague, Miss Motz, and she does, and he'd mumble something that I couldn't understand and the patients couldn't understand. Would that be all right? Would that be all right with you? And these patients were looking up at this tall, good-looking guy who would just save their life or was about to save their life. And he said, oh, yes, Dr. Oz, that would be just fine. And then he would swish out of the room with his white coat flapping behind him, and they would look at me terrified and say, what are you going to do to me? Yeah. And I said, I'm going to touch you and make you feel better. Yeah. They were thrilled. Yeah. Because
just to hear that.
Since they'd come in the hospital, no one had done anything but poke them and make them feel worse. Yeah. And so I started working with the patients before and after surgery. But I got very curious about what's happening in the operating room. So eventually I talked my way into the operating room and started working with patients during surgery.
So you weren't actually a nurse?
Oh no, I don't have any medical degrees whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
That picture of me on the front of the book in scrubs. I did wear scrubs to go in and do my energy healing in the operating room.
I guess you'd have to for for sanitary reasons.
Well, I should say I did. As far as surgery was concerned, I did a lot of on-the-job training.
Yeah, well, you were a pioneer.
I'm a pioneer, but I'm feeling like a failed pioneer because I thought after I published my book that the operating rooms of the country would be crowded with healers, and indeed it has not happened.
Not fast enough, for sure.
Barely any.
Just barely any. So how do you think we can change that?
If patients begin to be aware
so it's education
of how important it is and start demanding that and saying, well, if you won't let the healer in with me, I'll go to the surgeon down the street who will.
Right.
That's when it will change.
Oh gosh, it's, it always seems that it has to get extreme for it to change, no matter what.
Well, when I was working in surgery, there was an article that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine that said patients did better in warmer operating rooms. Do you think the temperature went up 1 degree in any operating room in this country? No, because the docs are under the lights and they like it cold.
Yeah.
So
it's I was just in the hospital, I shared with you, those waiting rooms, post and pre-surgery were so bloomin' cold. And I said, why is this so cold? I mean, I asked for a warm blanket and another blanket on top of it. They said because of the germs.
No, it has nothing to do with the germs. They keep the operating rooms cold because the lights are very hot.
Yeah.
and the doctors, that's how they
too
can be
hot.
comfortable. Yeah.
Well, wow. It's taken a long time, and it still hasn't really cracked the wall in the room, surgical
Well, I have to
room.
tell you what Mehmet said to me when first started. He said, if I could seriously believe that hypnosis made a difference in surgery, I'd have to shoot myself.
Because he's a medical doctor.
Because that would somehow reduce the great importance of the mechanics of surgery.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, I know way back there was psychic healing, and it used to work a long time ago until it was abused. So, that would take the money away from the doctors.
It's not a question of the money, because as you know, doctors are notoriously poor investors.
Well, yeah.
It's not about the money. The money represents a certain level of prestige and importance, and that's what it really is.
Well, it's power.
It's importance,
Yeah.
it's significance, it's
Yeah.
being significant,
Yeah.
in people's lives and in the
Right.
eyes of the world.
Right. Well, I guess you can't give up on trying to educate the public, just like what I'm doing, to keep educating. So, more success stories need to keep coming out so people will start believing more.
I think you have to keep offering the information, and I also think people need higher expectations of how good they can feel.
That is huge. Yes.
Most
Isn't
people
that?
expect to feel worse and worse the older they get, and expect
Attitude.
that something will go wrong, and if it gets fixed, it's never going to get fixed completely. That's absurd.
Yes.
I mean, but they put up with that. If people could be more hopeful and therefore more demanding of the medical system, they'd get more. And if the medical system didn't deliver it, they'd find other people who did.
Right. Well, we have to keep educating then, and this is why I'm glad to have you on this show, because it's education.
But also somehow people need to feel that they deserve to feel terrific all the time, and that's the natural state. The feeling good is natural.
Well, yes, absolutely, and I think people live too much in the past, and it hinders going forward. Like the health issues. I mean, I could do the same thing, but I'm not going to. I know. See, I'm aware.
Well, actually, people live quite literally in the past, and this is something I discovered in surgery. I discovered in surgery that people under general anesthesia were going back into the womb and were reliving their prenatal lives and the trauma of their prenatal lives.
Wow.
Well, think of it. Somebody else breathes for you. In open heart surgery, the blood circulates out of your body and back again, just like fetal circulation. Changes happen in the body and you have no memory of them and no knowledge of them. So there's a kind of state-dependent memory that occurs, and I think a lot of what goes wrong in surgery has to do with traumatic memories being re-triggered and not being resolved.
Yes, and really it's just acknowledging it and letting it go. I mean, I've done rebirthing. I've done like 5 times. I've done rebirthing.
Yeah. Well, the difficult part is the acknowledging to begin with, because there's so much terror involved in memories of being in an indifferent womb, let alone being in a hostile womb.
Well, I don't know if you know anything about RH babies. I was an RH baby.
Wow. How does that happen?
Well, your mother is negative, RH negative. Your father is positive, and after the second child, as soon as the umbilical cord is cut, the blood goes bad. The chemistry goes bad.
What does RH stand for?
You would ask me that.
I'm curious.
It's the RH factor of the blood.
Yeah.
But RH, what is it?
I'll look it up on the internet as soon as I get home.
Yeah, I know. I should know that because I tell this story. And so I was fighting for my life being born. So I know that's what makes me have such energy, But I have done 5 rebirthings because I wanted to get through that.
I understand that.
To heal that so I could be free and just not let that be a hindrance in any part of my life.
No, I understand. I've done my birth many times, actually, and each time, because mine gotten another piece, and another piece.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's very exciting to see the work you're doing and acknowledging that people do live in the past, and it's not freeing, especially if there's trauma. You know?
Well, the problem is that the body lives in the past. That parts of our body are
If we
stuck
don't
at different
heal.
are stuck at different ages. I mean, our mind can certainly go into the future,
Yes.
but the body gets programmed with certain early survival mechanisms. But what helps you survive at 3 months in the womb may be extremely damaging to you at 33 years after the womb. And since nature has such an imperative to get you born, she
Yes.
doesn't rewrite that software. You have to do the rewriting.
Right.
And that's the challenge. I believe that depression, for example, I mean, the message of depression is don't move. If you move, you're going to die. Don't move.
Yeah.
That's a very valid message to a fetus with a troubled mother. Because if you move, the mother reaches for a cigarette, reaches for a drink, or pumps stress hormones into the bloodstream. So depression is actually a prenatal survival mechanism.
Yeah.
But then, which then persists into life because nature doesn't bother to change the receptors.
So
for
how
that.
do you think that you can heal that as an adult?
By going back into the womb and actually reliving the terror of what it's like to feel rejected by your mother when she doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And if you can mobilize your anger about that, babies aren't allowed to get angry in the womb because to nature it's a waste of calories. So she suppresses anger in the womb. You know, and gives you this not moving, depressed state so you can survive. Maybe you just move at night when mommy's sleeping. But if you can get back in touch and actually get angry with that as a fetus, I know it sounds strange.
No,
then
this
you
is
don't have
interesting.
to. Then you have all this energy available for action as an adult.
Yes. I mean, it totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, there again, it's healing. I mean, our bodies, like you said, they take everything in, and it's so important to heal that. I mean, I know when I've gotten angry, I'll take a tennis racket and I'll think of the reason or whom I'm angry at just to get it out of my body and hit my bed or something. I don't do that very often.
No, it's a great relief to the muscles to be able to do that.
Yes.
It's a great relief to the muscles and to the blood, and it's very good for the circulation.
Yeah. You know, so it's important to do that in a healthy way and not take it out on people, you know, which a lot of people do.
But my work does even one more step. It will take that and say, how old do I feel when I'm doing this? And whom does this person represent? Mommy, daddy, sibling?
Yes.
So after I have people deal with the current event, I have them go back and deal with the root event that got them to be dealing with such a person to begin with.
Yeah. Right.
And that, to me, completes the healing cycle.
Yes. Yeah. And see, that's the gift, is being able to do that to complete the healing cycle, as you say. That I wish everybody could do.
Yes.
And
Then we wouldn't have a country run by angry babies, wouldn't that
yes.
be nice?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Or the world.
Yes.
The world.
Indeed, it's certainly not particular to our culture.
It is in our culture, but you know, like in the Mideast, you know, what's going on there? It's like they're all angry.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
If motherhood were truly reverenced, if women were supported to have children when they were with a loving mate, you know, under loving situations, and then supported in having those children,
Yes.
things would change. But for all the, you know, godmother and apple pie that this country is supposedly about, mothering, the act of mothering, is not, you know, is not really valued very highly.
Do you have children?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I didn't get healed enough soon enough to have children.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I would have, when I could have had children, I would not have been a good mother. So I'm glad for my sake and for their sake that I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I know when I have one daughter, and I delve deep as I could after she was born. And I think, you know, everything was good, and she's 24 now. She's going through her own stuff, and she has to heal it.
That's wonderful.
know.
I wish that more parents would take the birth of a child as an impetus for their own healing. It would be extraordinary, a very different world.
Well, I know for myself, I was a completely different mother than my mother. I don't think my mother really wanted, I mean, my father was ready for me, but my mother wasn't. But I was ready for my daughter.
That's a tremendous triumph.
I loved her, you know, I had to get pregnant. My time clock was going off. So I'm glad I did, because I gave it everything. But it wasn't easy. I was a single parent for the whole time. But it's okay, you know.
I think all progress on the planet has been made by parents who managed to give somehow more than they got. The parents who have managed to do that are the people who are responsible for human progress.
Yes, and we just keep going. Just keep going. Have to. You know, there's too much work that needs to be done, and support and education that needs to be done to heal people. period, you know, and if you can get them when they're young.
What I think is so wonderful about the time we live in is that the word healing is so widely used. You know, in the 19th century, for example, people didn't talk about healing people. They thought people are the way they are. They're sick, they're criminal.
Right.
The whole idea that things could be, the whole idea of attaching this very profound causality to human behavior and human experience, and that we really can go back and change things, is a wonderful contemporary idea. And I'm so glad I live in a time when that idea has currency.
Absolutely.
Think of the cultures that think you have to end up in a next life in order to change something.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So I think this is a wonderful time to be living from that perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And to be able to be part of, well, I say we're change agents. You can call it whatever you want, but we're part of that change or the transition. I know Deepak Chopra says we're the transition team. And, you know, I'll just keep doing it. I'll leave you with this. Self-discipline is a form of freedom. Freedom from laziness and lethargy. Freedom from the expectations and demands of others. Freedom from weakness and fear and doubt. H.A. Dorfman, American Mental Skills Coach. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own dream or illusion. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be a victim of needless suffering. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. Never give up. First, be aware and conscious of your thoughts and catch yourself before they come out of your mouth, especially the negative thoughts, into words. It takes being sedulous, persevering, and disciplined. Be grateful for who you are and where you've come from and what you have, and be grateful for your freedom. And eat healthy. Good nutrition feeds your mind and your body temple. Don't forget to exercise. Feed your spirituality with meditation and prayer. Thank God. Love yourself unconditionally. Stop criticizing, stop judging, and allowing others to dominate the way you feel and think about yourself. Be compassionate and share your abundance and wealth with others. When fear knocks, let faith answer the door. Wealth is the ability to fully experience life, by Henry David Thoreau. Thank you, Marin TV, for facilitating our show, and especially to my crew, Eric, Ginger, and Jack. Please support and become a member of Marin TV. Bye for now, until next time.